By my 29th Christmas, my life was measured in careful choices. Law clerk by day, aspiring writer by night, each ambition fighting for space in a crowded childhood home. I'd always pushed to be seen, always one step behind the family spotlight. That winter saw record snow drifts piling against the Avery house. More ice than warmth to every greeting, more distance than comfort between us. Calvin, my stepfather, raised his glass hesitantly. This year, Maris, it's time to move on. You're not family anymore. The words cut through the candles and crystal, and stunned silence gripped the table. My stepsister, Aurillane, snickered. Eloise glanced away, awkward and pitying, and my mother's face was rigid as stone. My world shrank to nothing but aching disappointment. Through the rest of dinner, laughter spread from the end of the table, neighbors watching through frosty windows, the rumor mill spinning faster than ever. Every gesture was perfectly designed for humiliation. The gifts stopped in front of me. The family portrait hung without my face, and my name was scratched boldly off the Christmas stockings. I gave up in the middle of dessert, stepping out into the biting snow with tears freezing against my cheeks. By sunrise, I made a decision nobody expected, not even myself. If I weren't their family, I'd become their rival. I bought the mansion next door, the place Calvin dreamed of for years, but never managed to claim. I would turn that shame into something powerful. In that mansion, I found the biggest secret the Averys ever tried to hide from me. Secrets with clues buried in attic paintings, coded letters shoved behind wallpaper, and betrayals that no holiday toast could ever disguise. My life, my profession, my story, none of it fit the roles they wanted me to play. I was Maris Avery, law clerk, writer, survivor, one determined cat at my side, ready to reclaim the dignity they thought they'd erased. If this story caught your heart, make sure to hit subscribe so we keep bringing you stories that dig deep into truth, guilt, and redemption. Heartbreak and hope keep turning these pages. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We read them all, and your words keep us going. The clink of crystal goblets drowned out my plea. Candlelight flickered across faces that once meant home. But tonight, every glance bounced off me like I didn't belong. Plates stacked high, laughter swelling. But I heard it all from a distance, as if I were peering through a window from outside in the snow. Calvin raised his wine, voice booming with false cheer, to new beginnings and letting go of the past. His eyes never left me, and everyone knew who he meant. Arlen scrolled through her phone, smirking, swiping through photos. Some she'd taken of me with food caught between my teeth, some with red eyes after crying in the coat room. She posted them, fingers moving fast, her notifications buzzing. Family group chat lit up in her lap, cousins piling on jokes about Maris can't handle Christmas, and I could see my embarrassment growing viral in real time. Gifts rotated around the table, skipping me like a skipped stone across a frozen pond. My name was missing from every tag, and the stockings above the fire were uneven with one empty hook. My mother kept glancing at the fireplace rather than meeting my eyes. Calvin pulled out an oversized ledger and bragged about budgets, about growth and power, and making space for those willing to take risks, a pointed jab at my supposed lack of ambition. Even the neighbors, some invited for the first time, looked away or whispered. Dessert came and went. I tried to speak once, to remind everyone of the Christmas Eves we used to stay up late building gingerbread houses and decorating thrift store ornaments. It was like shouting into a snowstorm. Calvin cut me off. New rules for a new year, Maris. Time to grow up. The room tilted, and I felt myself slipping out of my own life. I nearly bolted, but at the coat rack, Eloise brushed by, sliding something into my pocket with a quick squeeze of my hand. Her eyes were soft but urgent. "Everyone is watching," she whispered. "You'll be okay." I slipped outside into a world painted in icy blue. Only when the door clicked shut behind me did I dare look. In my trembling palm, a handwritten postcard, yellowed and creased, with bold, looping letters. An address I didn't recognize stared back at me. There was no message, just the numbers and a crimson wax seal pressed where a stamp belonged. My phone buzzed with alerts. Arlen's newest post, me, caught mid-blink, captioned "Some people just can't let go," already racked up likes. Humiliation burned, then settled into something harder. I traced the address on the card, the numbers strangely familiar. My mind spun as memories clicked into line. It was the vacant estate next door, the one everyone whispered about, the one my family circled like vultures but never claimed. I clenched the postcard, heart pounding. Whatever waited at that address, I knew it was meant for me, and not even my family's rejection could stop me from walking toward the secrets in that house. I had nothing left but a credit score and a grudge. The morning after Christmas barely existed. Sunlight drowned in gray drifts. My breath fogged the window as I stared at the mansion next door, the one that haunted every family story, always out of reach, its windows watching us with quiet judgment. I sat at the kitchen table, dialing Mrs. Bixler before my nerves fractured. She answered in clipped syllables, her pride tangible even through the receiver. "The Avery house? Not for the faint of heart. Are you sure, Maris?" I said I was, even if my heart hammered with every word. Stepping into the mansion, the air crackled with leftover tension from 100 arguments whispered by its walls. Wallpaper peeled in corners, floors groaned, but the place dripped with the promise of something more. Ambition, history, maybe even revenge. Boxes lined the main hallway, the scent of old perfume and secrets lingering. Mrs. Bixler paraded me from room to room, droning about market trends while dropping veiled warnings. "You'll have competition," she said. "A few locals are circling, the sort who don't forgive or forget." A knock at the door interrupted our tour. A couple from my old school trying to outbid me, all fake smiles and cold handshakes. Calvin's name came up, their voices deliberately loud as if sending a message for me to back down. Tension spiked, but I called their bluff, raising the offer till their faces soured. Mrs. Bixler arched her brow, almost impressed. "You really want this?" she asked, handing me the contracts with shaking hands. In the master bedroom, dust resting heavily on everything, I dropped my bag and breathed in the silence. That's when I noticed a faded wardrobe, too heavy to move alone, rubbing harsh lines into the ancient carpet. Behind its corner, the painted baseboard curved when every other line was straight. Pulling at the loose fragment revealed a rough patch. Someone had taken a paintbrush with a steadier hand than mine and etched a pattern beneath the original finish. A code, not words but shapes and numbers, tiny leaves curling around the frame, joined by uneven ticks and dashes. My mind locked onto the rhythm of codes I'd spent years learning as a law clerk. This wasn't decoration. It was a message, meant only for the one who cared enough to notice. Kneeling in the dust, I copied every curve into my notepad, adrenaline urging me on. Outside, a neighbor lingered by the fence, tossing a sideways glance. He warned me quietly, "That house changes people. Be careful what you look for." I straightened, defiant, my resolve hardening. My parents tossed me out, my family shunned me, but here I was unraveling clues they never even knew were there. Later, with the code scrawled across the page, I recognized the sequence. It pointed to the old greenhouse, its windows thick with grime, doors chained shut for years. The answer wasn't in open rooms or easy smiles. It waited in a locked compartment, hidden in the one place where nothing ever grew. Tomorrow I'd go digging for it. The past had finally thrown me a challenge I couldn't ignore. Moonlight shattered on dirty glass, chasing away every denial. The old greenhouse hunched in my backyard like a forgotten animal, draped in blackberry vines and dust so thick it blurred every window. Midnight found me there, boots crunching. My fingers traced the coded shapes I'd copied from the bedroom. A loose tile near the back, half camouflaged beneath toppled flower pots, caught my eye. Kneeling, I chipped away dirt until the tile moved with the reluctant pop of something undisturbed for years. Underneath, a hollow space just big enough for a folder, long since yellowed. I reached in, skin prickling, and yanked out a packet, half a contract, torn jagged across the middle. Names leaped off the page. Calvin Avery and only the letter M listed for the other party, the rest obscured by a rip straight through the signatures. That's when I heard it, a foot stomp, fabric scraping glass. I spun, shining my flashlight straight into Arlen's astonished face. Her coat was open, her hair messy. Phone was already recording. I hissed, "Arlen, what are you doing here?" She stammered. "Just wanted to see if you were really this desperate, Maris." Her words oozed jealousy and something sharper. Fear. Before she could run, I snatched her phone and forced her outside with the threat of calling the cops. Her shadow lingered at the edge of the yard, a warning that I could never relax. Turning back, I focused on the torn contract. One scribbled margin note caught my attention, a message on AM black tape. I shoved the page into my pocket, nerves raw, and hurried back inside. My heart banged in my ears as I tore through the house, searching every closet, shelf, and drawer until I found it. An antique answering machine tucked under a pile of old towels in the hall closet. The tape inside marked in faded pen, Christmas. I hesitated, then pressed play. Static roared, then crackled into my mother's voice, trembling but intense. "Maris, if you hear this, the papers, don't trust Calvin. Don't trust anybody who talks about the contract. Promise me, hide everything you find and be careful with the greenhouse." My throat constricted. The tone in her voice was all warning, no softness, no forgiveness. The tape warbled, ending in a hiss of silence, but the stakes had shifted. This wasn't just about humiliation or money. Someone had gone out of their way to bury the truth, and my own family had played a deeper game than I ever guessed. Arlen's involvement wasn't an accident. Calvin was hiding more than greed. With every answer, the questions multiplied. I pressed the torn contract and tape to my chest, vowing to uncover every paper my mother risked everything to protect. The ghosts of this house weren't letting go yet, and neither was I. I played the tape. Her secrets burned colder than the winter wind. My mother's trembling voice haunted the walls of my new home, warnings woven through static. Each time I replayed it, her words sharpened. "Watch for the papers, Maris. The piano bench. Hide whatever you find." Fear pooled in my stomach. She'd never safeguarded birthday cards or jewelry, but this was different. The next morning, Calvin found me at the local cafe, loud, smug, talking just a shade too close. He draped an arm across the counter and sighed. "People who chase ghosts never sleep, Maris." I blinked at him, refusing to react as he boasted about lawyers and restraining orders, telling anyone who would listen that his troubled stepdaughter was trying to rewrite family history. His laughter filled the cafe, and I felt the sting of humiliation, old wounds turned fresh in front of strangers. The more Calvin pushed, the more the barista and regulars sent confused glances, some pitying, some entertained. Arlen filmed a snippet for her followers, making sure to capture my red cheeks. I stood my ground, replied calmly, "I know what I'm doing, Calvin." Even as fear jabbed at my ribs, I refused to be bullied out of searching for the truth. I walked away before he could say more, hands shaking but head high. Back at the mansion, I found Eloise waiting on the porch, bundled against the cold. She reached into her bag, pulled out a faded photograph, edges curled, colors nearly gone. I frowned until the faces sharpened in the light. My biological father, smiling awkwardly, arm wrapped around the mansion's original owner as if sealing some private agreement. Eloise pointed to the backdrop, the front steps, and said, "I thought you should see this. Your father was closer to this place than anyone realized." I traced the figures, my thoughts racing back through family stories, half-truths, and lost time. Something tugged at me in the photo. A line on my father's wrist, dark and looping. I held the picture closer, heart skipping. It wasn't a scar, bracelet, or birthmark. It was a tattoo. The same curling pattern as the secret code hidden in my mansion's master bedroom. The leafy shapes I'd deciphered just days before. It hit me all at once. The clues weren't about Calvin or Arlen, not really. They were tangled up in my father's past. The connection between him and everything this house symbolized. That tattoo was a message, an invitation, wrapped in family and concealed under a lifetime of shame. I pressed the photo to my chest, the piano bench from my mother's warning now suddenly urgent. As night fell, my resolve hardened. I didn't just want answers. I needed them. Every secret felt stitched into my blood, demanding to be understood before anyone else twisted my story further. The mansion wasn't just a stage for my humiliation. It was about to reveal who I had always been. The piano hadn't been played in years, but its secrets still rang. Dust coated the keys, sunlight faded along the lid, but I felt drawn to its heavy body like a moth to a secret flame. The photo of my father, tattoo twisting in patterns I'd already traced, guided my fingers along the bench's ornate edge. The leafy loops from his wrist repeated in the woodwork, carved by hands that wanted someone to notice but not too easily. I knelt, pressing each curl and knot, stopping at a spot that rose minutely with pressure. With nervous energy, I slid my fingernail under the sliver of trim where the pattern doubled back. The echoing thunk of hidden wood gave me chills. A shallow compartment revealed itself, pitch black inside until my flashlight cut through the gloom. There, delicate and luminous, lay a tiny safe deposit key pinned to a velvet ribbon that had long since faded. My heart hammered. This wasn't a keepsake. It was a trail. Something meant for me all along. A century-old stamp glimmered on the key's brass face, the year 1912 scrolled beside a faint crest. It weighed little but carried my world. Sudden noise crashed through the hallway. Viv, my scatterbrained cousin, barreled in, cheeks red, dress askew, waving a half-empty bottle. I groaned as she dragged herself into the parlor, shouting, "Have you heard Calvin's latest plan? He's saying the mansion is hiding a fortune and you're just a placeholder, Maris." Viv's words tumbled over each other. I froze. So Calvin's obsession was spreading beyond cruel jokes to family legend. Viv dropped onto the floor beside me, babbling about a party next week, Calvin's bragging, and how Arlen was already making videos about unlocking old secrets. Her careless tongue let slip details I'd never heard. Calvin staying up late poring over maps, asking questions about old safes and rumored treasures in local bars. I thanked her and steered her out before she could do more damage, pocketing the key carefully. The next day, I marched to the oldest bank in town. My hands sweated as I slid the key across the counter, heart pounding. The clerk, ancient and precise, checked the serial number and led me to a vault. She pulled out the box. My name, newly etched, gleamed on the tag. I fumbled with the lock, praying for answers but bracing for disappointment. Inside lay nothing but dust, a curled scrap of paper, and a scribbled phone number, digits faded but still legible. I stared, frustration boiling. Where was the fortune everyone else thirsted for? The clerk shrugged, saying the box had been emptied ages ago except for this one number. She slid it toward me, eyes unreadable. This clue, missing treasures and expectations, was more than a dead end. It was a challenge. The number was strange, not local, but written in careful script. Moments later, outside on the steps, I stared at that paper. Who would I call? What waited on the other end? The mansion's tale hadn't finished. It had just changed voices. My heart... A long pause. When Agent Markel spoke, his voice was cold and clipped. "I know who you are. You've walked into a financial storm, Maris." I waited, breath shallow as snow drifted around my boots. Markel explained Calvin's secrets bluntly. "Your stepfather has been siphoning family trust funds through a series of old accounts, some now flagged in criminal investigations." The words hit like sleet. My hands shook, rage and humiliation roiling through me. I pressed for more, but Markel said only, "You may find answers if you look where money leaves its marks. Think dates, Maris. Look closer to home." I clung to those words while searching the mansion's basement, dumping out boxes, shoving aside trunks filled with moldy linens. At the back, wedged under a cracked foundation stone, I found an old, coffee-stained calendar from years before. Pages stuck together, ink faded almost invisible. But next to scattered family birthdays and old appointments, a series of dates stood out, written in my mother's looping hand. At first glance, they were nothing. But when I lined them up against Markel's hints, I realized each one matched a bank transaction I'd unearthed over the last few weeks. Besides certain dates, in tiny letters, Mom had written initials, CVS, sometimes just a question mark. Some were circled with wobbly lines and strange little symbols, dollar signs, arrows, even a few frowning faces. I snapped photos, spreading the calendar and my old records across the floor, heart hammering as the pieces fell painfully into place. This was the blueprint for everything Calvin had done, and every time he'd drained money, Mom had known. She tried to mark the flow and warn me, but no one listened. That's when Markel called back, voice low. "I checked your findings. The next transfer is happening this afternoon, hours from now, at a downtown branch. If you want to stop Calvin, you need to get there before the money disappears for good." Everything in me braced for another fight. I took photos of every note, folded the calendar deep into my bag, and threw on my coat. The cold outside kicked my nerves higher. Every step away from the mansion toward town felt like crossing a line I couldn't return from. I sent Eloise a desperate text. "Meet me at the bank now." Truth was only hours, maybe minutes from being lost again. I wasn't going down quietly. Not this time. The bank doors reflected my desperation. My boots skidded over slick pavement as I rushed toward the entrance, Eloise struggling to keep pace through the biting dusk. Inside, cold light gleamed off marble and glass, and my heart drummed a wild rhythm against my ribs. Every minute counted. Calvin's pale silhouette slid through the queue, coat collar up, eyes darting. I could spot his nerves from the doorway, fingers twitching over a battered briefcase gripped too tightly. I bolted past the stairs and the stifled whispers. Old neighbors, local shoppers, faces I'd tried to forget. Eloise brushed my arm, steadying me, and together we confronted Calvin just as he reached the teller. He tried to block our way, sneering, "Should have stayed out of this, Maris." I ignored his bravado, demanding answers as Eloise dialed Agent Markel for backup. The commotion rippled across the lobby. Customers lifted their phones, recording every word. Police called in over the tension. Calvin stammered denials, fumbled under questions from the bank staff. Within moments, 2 officers pushed between us, ushering him into a side office. The briefcase nearly slipped as he tried to hide it behind his leg, but Eloise acted fast, snatching it when his grip loosened. An officer took her statement, eyes wide with confusion at the family drama unraveling in a public space. With hands trembling, I fumbled open the metallic case, cold air swirling as a bundle of tarnished keys tumbled onto my lap. Each one ancient, labeled with faded tags stamped in handwritten ink. Library, cellar, attic, numbers and letters I couldn't make sense of. At the bottom, wrapped in crumpled tissue, rested a journal page, words faded and familiar. My own childish handwriting sketched flowers down the side. Title, Dreams for the House. Notes I'd written at 8 years old about secret rooms and treasure hunts, the mansion's shadow already hiding daydreams I never knew mattered. Eloise touched my shoulder, eyes wide with wonder and worry. Calvin watched from behind a frosted glass partition, fury and panic mixing in his glare. The crowd outside buzzed, fragments of my humiliation, shouts of drama, a few hopefuls cheering for truth. Every face was a reminder of the stakes. The past was spilling out onto the floor, piece by piece. Scanning the keys, one caught my attention. A bronze shaft labeled SRM. The tag was newer than the rest, its edges still crisp. I thought back to every room I'd wandered, every locked door I'd found too heavy, and realized there was one wing of the mansion, never entered. It's handled different from all the others. The confrontation drew the knight's attention, but as police led Calvin out for questioning, I gripped the SRM key tighter. It was more than proof of theft or betrayal. It was next door. I left the bank with Eloise, the briefcase a promise in my hands. Tomorrow, the mansion's secrets wouldn't stay locked, and neither would the truth about my family. The key had changed everything. Every memory I built came crashing down. The morning sun glared through frost-laced glass as I gripped the key from the bank and walked down the mansion's east wing, the hallway narrower and colder than I remembered. My steps slowed in front of the locked door at the end, the one I'd avoided as a child, called the study room in my old looping handwriting. Years of secrets pressed back as I slid the key into the tarnished lock and turned. Inside, motes of dust spiraled in the air left undisturbed for decades. Floor-to-ceiling shelves bowed with the weight of cracked ledgers, family albums, letters tied in brittle string. My name, Avery, was scrawled on box labels in a pen I hadn't seen since childhood. I knelt, sifting through a life I never knew was meant for me. Downstairs, ping after cruel ping vibrated my phone. Arlen had mounted a new attack, a wave of videos and posts flooding my feed, twisting everything I'd done. She called me a thief, a faker, and accused me of buying my way into a family that never really belonged. The comments stung, followers doubled down, and humiliation burned hot and new. But here, surrounded by letters and books, I finally felt an odd certainty creep in. This house was my story too. On the dusty writing desk, a small velvet case waited. Inside, a tarnished silver locket sat heavy in my palm. Its clasp stuck, but with a careful twitch it popped open. Tucked behind a faded photograph, my father, barely older than me, was a scrap of folded paper, its handwritten lines delicate and coded. My stomach flipped as I squinted at the note, recognizing the patterns I'd seen before in the master bedroom and the tattoo on my father's wrist. The message was a string of lawyers' offices and initials, arranged with dates that matched key moments in the mansion's paperwork. A signature at the bottom read, G.D. Henley, flashes of a name from whispered stories, always invoked with reverence when the house's true ownership came up. Phone in hand, locket tucked away, I searched Henley's name until I tracked down a decrepit office in a fading strip mall. When I arrived, G.D. Henley was older than I'd imagined, his eyes sharp behind thick glasses. He motioned me inside, listening as I spilled my story and held out the coded note. 20 minutes later, with a heavy pause, Henley unlocked a fireproof drawer. Maris, this deed's never been claimed. It's in your birth name, legally yours since you turned 18. No one came to collect. The rush of truth dizzied me. My whole life, I'd been trained to see myself as an outsider, but it was all there on embossed paper, unclaimed, hidden, almost lost. As I stared at the old deed, visions of every family slight, every moment of shame and silence spun through me. But their power began to break. With the right key, I'd opened more than a locked room. I'd uncovered who was meant to hold this house all along. Ink on old paper carried more weight than any apology. I clutched the deed Henley handed me, its curling letters and seal shining with authority my family could never erase. The mansion was mine by right, not by fight. Not something to be bargained, inherited, or stolen. Walking back through lamplit streets, each step felt lighter, carrying purpose beneath the weight of cold December air. The next morning, Calvin and Arlen rallied on the curb, holding cardboard signs painted in frantic red. Neighbors peered from porches, some filming, some whispering. Calvin shouted about betrayal, waving old tax records and family photographs, insisting history and blood mattered more than any legal document. Arlen posted updates mid-protest, letting hundreds of followers crash the scene online. Yet for each accusation, more and more faces turned toward me with curiosity, some with sympathy. Eloise stood steadfast, arms folded, reassuring, twisted at the base, he murmured. So I did, and a hidden compartment popped open. Inside, wrapped in tissue and history, lay a single gold coin dated 1963. Not wealth, but symbol. A marker of ownership, a tradition belonging to whoever truly claimed the house. Later, alone in my living room, I turned the coin over and memories sharpened. That same coin had lived in the Avery family Christmas box, pulled from the tree each year and passed around as a blessing. Every child longed to hold it, believing it gave luck for the next year, until it vanished the Christmas my mother left. I felt the old ache, realization stinging. The mansion and its past had been tied to me since the beginning, but shame and secrecy tried to keep it hidden. The crowd thinned as evening fell. Calvin's shouts faded, Arlen's phone battery died, and the protest wilted against a world already ready for new drama. But the coin, heavy, golden, and certain, connected every strand of loss and hope I struggled for all my life. There was meaning in this proof beyond old wounds. I held the evidence. I could set the story straight. And tonight, the power to heal or to humble rested in ink and gold, finally in my own hands. Every hope and heartbreak spun around that tiny coin. The sunlight caught its edges as I turned it in my palm, weighing the history it carried. I knew it wasn't just gold or luck. It was a sign, a piece of the mansion's truth that outlasted the fights and lies. Looking up old property records, stories from town elders, and faded newspaper clippings, I learned the coin was minted by the house's first owner. A tradition started to be passed down only to the rightful heir. Each time the mansion changed hands with respect and honesty, the coin moved with it. Neighbors started talking, old judgments melting into respect. People who once whispered about my family's drama began to see the mansion not as a symbol of Avery's shame, but as a story of resilience, truth, and honest inheritance. Even Mrs. Bixler congratulated me, not with sales talk but with genuine pride. Eloise, sensing my need for answers, spent the afternoon helping me dig through the mansion's untouched library. Book spines creaked open, dust flying, until she uncovered a slim stack of papers crammed behind a false shelf. The handwriting jumped out immediately. Calvin's sharp slant, nervous and jagged even now. I unfolded the confession, eyes wide. Maris never signed those documents, Calvin wrote. The purchase was forced. I never wanted her to know. The admission stung more than his shouts at the morning protest. Every line detailed how Calvin forged my name on property sales, transferred money behind closed doors, chased his own ambitions without caring who he hurt. The final line, scrawled in panic, read, "I only wanted the house for myself." She was always meant to have it. Eloise hugged me tight. This changes everything. We called Henley, who confirmed that forgery made all Calvin's legal claims void. He encouraged me to make the truth public, not just for myself, but to close the door on decades of manipulation. As evening fell, Eloise handed the letter to a local journalist she trusted. The next morning, Calvin's confession was headline news. Neighbors who once took sides stood in uncomfortable silence. Judgment shifted. Calvin, red-faced and frantic, faced more than lost property. His reputation crumbled. Arlen tried to defend her father online, but the truth had outpaced her posts. Suddenly, everyone watched me not with suspicion, but with curiosity, and for some, hope. The coin still glimmered in my pocket, a promise that dignity could survive betrayal. I wasn't just another disgraced daughter. The house, the inheritance, and even the old tradition now belonged to the one who refused to be erased. As spotlights turned my way, the mansion felt quieter, more open than before. The lies lost their power in the daylight, windows no longer shadowed by fear or denial. But I knew the attention was a double-edged sword, a chapter closing, another beginning. The coin wasn't just a keepsake. It was what I made of it, and my family's legacy was now mine to write. The crowd outside cheered what once tore me apart. I faced them from the old stone porch, clutching the deeds, the gold coin, and Calvin's confession letter. Every clue, every long night hunting for answers, stacked together, a proof even my family couldn't deny. Eloise, Viv, and Henley stood beside me as officials confirmed my legal name matched the mansion's original ownership. The hum of whispers, camera flashes, and old neighbors raising warm mugs was more than I ever expected. Calvin and Arlen didn't linger. The scandal, now splashed across local gossip and social media, cornered them. Within days, they packed up, drove away, their faces masked by closed windows and heavy sighs. Some in town pitied them, but most understood. The house had chosen its true keeper. Inside, bittersweet acceptance echoed against the walls. Viv wandered the halls, hands deep in her pockets, offering shy apologies for years of silence and friendly betrayals. I accepted, forgiving not just for her sake, but for my own. She helped me dust off unused rooms, together deciding which memories to keep and which to release back out to the world. In the quiet aftermath, Mrs. Bixler arrived in her usual whirlwind, pearls bright, lips pursed. She toured the mansion with a critical eye, then sat me down. "You've got what a lot of people envy, Maris, old money, old power. But remember, these walls attract more than family. Expect new rivals, new responsibilities, even new dangers." Her warning wasn't just about property. It was about the challenge of guarding dignity in a world always hungry to take it away. Days passed, and as news faded, the mansion grew busy with repairs and restoration. I poured effort into making it truly my own, opening doors to Eloise and Viv, inviting neighbors to see more than past drama. Slowly, friendships returned. People stopped seeing me as just a headline and remembered I was part of their world all along. Then, one morning, a letter slipped beneath the brass knocker. No name, no stamp, only elegant handwriting. An invitation to join a society for heirs, promising secrets, connections, alliances among those who held America's oldest estates. The allure was real. Prestige, belonging, a chance to be seen on a level Calvin never reached. But I hesitated, wondering if the world inside that envelope would only repeat the same battles I'd just survived. As I read the invitation aloud to Viv and Eloise, I realized claiming what's yours means choosing not just what you want to own, but who you want to become. The cheering crowd outside faded to a gentle hum, and for the first time, I felt my story belonged to me. Not to those who would trade it for status, but to those willing to stand beside me. Accepting this place was only half the victory. The other half lay in deciding what to build and who to build it with. The next door in my life remained closed, for now. But this home, these friends, this new beginning was everything I truly needed. No lake of diamonds could ever replace what I lost. The mansion gleamed in the soft glow of new lamps and old memories, smelling of polished wood and fresh paint, healed scars over ancient wounds. Instead of crowds and conflict, I invited only those who had stood with me: Eloise, Viv, Mrs. Bixler, Henley. We traded laughter, passed simple food, and watched as the rooms finally felt lighter, lived in, loved. The weight of gold, coins, and deeds faded behind the warmth we brought back to its walls. I counted each bill carefully, refusing luxury for luxury's sake. I handed Eloise the help her family needed, quietly paying the overdue repairs on her parents' crumbling motel, a place where half the town had slept or sought shelter at least once in their lives. Viv received a letter in the mail. Her debts cleared, a small grant for the art classes she'd always dreamed of, a gentle reward for finding her way back to honest ties. Music echoed softly from the grand piano, its secrets all spent, now bearing nothing but hope and harmony. We built something simple: comfort, trust, a circle of acceptance. Even Mrs. Bixler, always busy, paused to offer advice I took to heart. Spend it wisely, Maris. Money can build everything except peace. Peace has to come from the choices you make and the people you let in. Later that evening, Arlen tried reaching out. Her messages flickered across my phone. Her tone remorseful, memories of childhood pulling at my heart. I answered with kindness but declined her offer to visit. Dignity meant letting go of what hurt. Hope meant keeping space clear for what grew. Some things aren't meant to be reclaimed, even if forgiveness is. As midnight slipped in, I wandered onto the frost-painted front porch. A small child stood just outside the gate, cheeks flushed, arms wrapped around a bouquet of wildflowers, petals bright against the dark. She didn't speak, just handed me the flowers and darted back down the block, her family waving shyly from the sidewalk. It was the first real welcome from this town, not made from obligation or threat, but simple gratitude for the kindness I'd offered back. Standing at my front steps, bouquet in hand, I breathed deep. The gold coin, the old deed, the grand airing of wounds and victory, all now felt like stepping stones. This house, finally quiet, belonged not to inheritance or drama but to dignity, rebuilt again and again, in small acts that survived the test of loss and judgment. From now on, hope was my truest treasure, earned promise, shared with those who stood by me. My story was no longer about what could be taken, but what could be given. I welcomed what came next, not as a legacy to defend or a prize won, but as a chance to keep building what matters most. If this story caught your heart, make sure to hit subscribe so we keep bringing you stories that dig deep into truth, guilt, and redemption. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We read them all, and your words keep us going. Real family is chosen, not forced by blood. The greatest victories are not about revenge or wealth, but rebuilding dignity and truth when the world tries to take them away. Hit subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage, justice, and finding your place in a world that sometimes tries to push you out.